Homesteaders, gardeners, and cooks. My name is Jennifer. Welcome to Miles Away Farm, or welcome back to my kitchen. Today we are making a zucchini galette. And a galette is just a really fancy French, I assume, name for a free-form tart. And so we're making a zucchini tart. And this is a really great simple recipe to have in your back pocket, not only for zucchini, but for all kinds of roasted vegetables or all kinds of summer vegetables. You could do this with tomato as well. This comes from Smitten Kitchen, and if you are not already somebody who knows about Smitten Kitchen, may I highly recommend that you go to Smitten Kitchen. It's a blog with Deb Perlman. She also has multiple cookbooks. She's absolutely fantastic. And Deb was a vegetarian for a lot of years. She's no longer a vegetarian, but a lot of her recipes are quite vegetable forward because of that. And I don't think I've ever made a recipe from Smitten Kitchen that didn't come out. So her stuff is really spot on. She's a really funny writer, and her recipes are just so good. So we're gonna make a zucchini galette, and this is actually by request from probably over a year ago. I have a dear friend who watches my videos, and she requested that I do a galette video quite a while ago, and I just have never gotten around to it. So Sue, this is for you. So we're gonna make this out of zucchini. This particular variety of zucchini, this is an oversized one because I missed it. I should have picked it yesterday evening, and I picked it this morning, and we all know how that goes with zucchini. This variety is called Costata Romanesca. It's an Italian variety. You'll notice that it's not dark green. One of my favorite memories of doing farmers markets for 9 years was how often I was asked the question, what do I do with it, when it was a vegetable that looked just slightly different from what we're used to seeing in the grocery store. And this is an example of that. So this is not your classic straight dark green zucchini that we're all used to seeing from the grocery store, that are commercial varieties that are standardized to fit nicely into a box. I am not a huge zucchini fan, surprise, surprise. I've spent many, many years trying to learn to love it and doing a million different recipes with it and never really being thrilled with it. And then I tried this particular variety of zucchini. I think a friend of mine who comes to the seed swap every year somehow had recommended it, and I love this zucchini. So this is not in my top 5 of all vegetables ever, but I like it probably at least double the amount that I like regular zucchini. It's a little bit firmer, it's a little bit less watery. I feel like it has a better flavor. And so if you're looking for a zucchini variety and you have a lot of room in your garden, highly recommend this. You'll notice if you go back and look at other zucchini recipes that I've done for this channel that I always mention this zucchini. I really, really love it. It is, however, absolutely huge. This plant, I have 4 of these in a 4x8 raised bed. And right now they are in the process of swallowing up not only that bed, but the beds around it. So it is a monstrously large plant. I do think that it is a little bit resistant to squash bugs, not squash vine borers. Those are different. I live in the Western United States. Thankfully, fingers crossed, we don't currently have an issue with squash vine borers in our part of the country, but we do have an ungodly amount of squash bug problems. For whatever reason, I rarely see squash bugs on this plant, and if I do, it's pretty minor. And so they seem to be a little bit more resistant. I don't think squash bugs are as fond of this for whatever reason. The one thing that you need to know about this recipe, other than it's quite easy, is zucchini have a lot of moisture in them, even when they're this variety, which is a little bit firmer and a little bit more dense than a typical zucchini. And so the recipe has you slice these and then put salt on them and then put them on paper towels and then blot them dry a half an hour later. And what that salt is gonna do is it's gonna draw out some of the moisture, and that is gonna help your crust not completely sog out. It's not gonna be perfect. There's still probably gonna be a little bit of moisture in there, but filling is fairly dry, and then we're doing what we can to extract the moisture from the zucchini itself in order for this to not end up just being a giant soggy mess. But zucchini galette, I highly recommend it. I've made it twice this summer already. Let's get started. So to make the actual pastry crust for this, we need 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 stick of butter, which is 8 tablespoons.
How are you? Oh my goodness, so loud. It's so sad. Yeah, nobody ever feeds you.
And I've chunked that up into smaller pieces because I sometimes find my food processor has a hard time if I just leave these in big pieces. And so I'm breaking them up a little bit more. And then I'm going to pulse this in my food processor. You could certainly do this by hand with a pastry blender. The whole reason I own a food processor, this is my primary use for it, is cutting fat into flour. And you want this to be mixed to about the point of coarse cornmeal. I probably always overmix this when I do this because I'm not a big fan of great big chunks of butter in there, and a lot of people will leave those that way. That goes into a big bowl, and then we're going to add a 1/4 cup of sour cream, and that's going to give this just a little bit of tang. 2 teaspoons of lemon juice, again for a little bit of tang. And I love zucchini with lemon. I think if I were going to adapt this recipe at all, I would probably add some lemon zest to the filling. And then we're going to do a 1/4 cup of cold water, which is 4 tablespoons. And then I'm going to just mix that water, sour cream, lemon juice mixture together in the middle, make sure that's combined. And then I'll incorporate the flour into the rest of this mixture. And this is going to appear pretty dry, and you want that. So one of the tricks to making pastries that are flaky and light is 1, don't overmix the dough, and 2, don't add too much liquid. And both of those things are tricky because you are in the middle of doing this and it just seems like it's not going to come together, that there's not enough liquid in there. Just keep stirring. And again, I'm trying not to knead the dough. I don't want to create a lot of gluten. So I'm just trying to keep tossing everything lightly until that moisture is fully incorporated. Eventually, I give up on the spatula and do this with my hand. It's a little bit messy. And you can see how dry this is. It does not look like it's going to start coming together, but it does. You can see we're starting to form an actual dough ball. We're also trying to keep this really cold, and so that's the other thing, is not working it too much with your hands, just because the heat from your hands will melt that butter. So there's our dough, and we are gonna stash that in the refrigerator and let it chill for a couple of hours. And this is beeswax wrap, very nice for this. I'm getting my zucchini ready. This is a mandolin, also known as the way to slice the ends of your fingers off, so you have to be very careful when you're using it. I've got this setting as wide as it'll go. You want about a 1/4 inch slices here, but makes very quick work of a zucchini, and obviously just a tool. You can certainly do that by hand. And then I'm spreading all of those little zucchini coins out on paper towels. So this is a little bit tedious, but not too bad. And as a reminder, the point of this is we're trying to pull out some of that extra moisture in this so that it doesn't sog out our crust. Then I've got, this is a teaspoon of salt, and I'm dropping this from higher up just because the higher you drop it, the more it spreads out. And I'm trying to get a fairly even coating on this zucchini. So drop from on high, make you look like you're a fancy chef. And then we're going to just let this sit for about a half an hour. And that salt is going to pull some of that moisture out of our zucchini. So here I've got 4 teaspoons of olive oil and a clove of garlic. And I'm using my rasp grater for this. You could just finely chop this. You could put it through a garlic press, whatever you want to do. The finer it's grated, the stronger the garlic flavor is going to be, because you're breaking open more cell walls when you put it through a fine rasp grater like this. Don't forget to wash your rasp grater right away so that it doesn't end up with a bunch of garlic stuck to it. And then for the filling, we're going to need a half a cup of ricotta, a half a cup of Parmesan, and a half a cup of mozzarella. Easy to remember there. And then we're going to add to that a tablespoon of our garlic oil mixture so that we're flavoring that filling. And then a little bit of black pepper. And just mash that together. This is meant to be dry. Again, we're trying to keep a crispy crust, and so dry filling. At this point, our pastry has been chilling in the fridge and hydrating fully. It really, really helps consistency-wise if you can let your pastry crust chill for an hour or so. That moisture evenly distributes in that crust, and it makes it much, much easier to handle. Trying my best to get this into something resembling a round without a lot of cracks. I am not a pastry expert by any stretch of the imagination. And I've tried a bunch of different rolling pins over the years, including tapered dowels, and I bought this one probably, gosh, at a big box store 25 years ago, and it's still my favorite rolling pin. So roll, turn, keep adding flour just to make sure it's not sticking. And I know I want this to be about as wide as this piece of parchment paper, which is about as wide as my sheet pan. And so it's kind of an easy visual guide of how much I need to go here. And this is meant to be rustic and free form, and so it doesn't have to be perfect. But this one came out pretty round, which is better than I usually do. I'm going to slide that onto my sheet pan. This is technically a half sheet pan. And if you don't own half sheet pans, you just have random cookie sheets from wherever, go to a restaurant supply store and get yourself some half sheet pans. I probably use these 4 or 5 times a week. They are just such workhorses in my kitchen. So we're spreading out our filling. And this is pretty dry. And so I started out with a spatula and then it wasn't really working. And so I ended up just using my hands. And you want to leave about 2 inches around the outside that doesn't have filling on it, because that part is going to get folded over onto the top of our zucchini. And then at this point, our zucchini has been sitting. Look at all that moisture. You can see how that salt has pulled the moisture out of the zucchini. And then I'm just using some dry paper towels to mop up that extra liquid. And of course, there's paper towels underneath, and so the bottom half is getting soaked up as well. And then I'm just going to shingle these on here. You can do this as fiddly and as fancy as you want. I am not real fussy about this kind of thing. And so I just made a circle and then went back around the outside and made another circle. I did overlap them a little bit, but feel free to play with it as much as you like. And then that last little bit of garlic and olive oil, we are going to drizzle that over the top of this, which is just delightful. And again, if I were doing this and amending the recipe, I would probably put a little lemon zest in with this garlic oil mixture. I think a little bit of lemon in the actual zucchini would be lovely. And then we're just going to fold this up and crimp it. And I started going one direction and it wasn't really holding, and so I kind of changed gears and went in another direction. But I'm just pulling it up, crimping it together. Again, meant to be rustic, not meant to be Martha Stewart. It's supposed to be Country Kitchen, not Sunset Magazine. But you can see how I'm just crimping the dough together so that it stays up. And then the original recipe calls for an egg wash. I almost never do egg washes. I find them to be super fussy, and I just don't care. But feel free to put an egg wash on this if you want. This is 400 degrees, I think for about a half an hour. And I did put my convection oven on this just because I wanted to get as much air circulation as possible. One, to keep that crust crusty, and also to dry out that zucchini even more. But there you have it, gorgeous. And then I let this cool for probably 10 minutes or so before I cut it up. And it held together pretty well. This turned out quite delicious and pretty gorgeous in terms of presentation. One of the things I like about this recipe is the zucchini is still pretty firm. I don't love super soft zucchini. I prefer it raw to cooked. And so this is like warmed through and tender, but not super soft. And then we ate half of this one night and then half of it the next night. This probably technically serves 8, but who are we kidding? We're gonna eat at least 2 pieces. And then I'm adding just a little bit of fresh lemon juice to this. This was my own call on this, but I had that lemon out, so why not? And then we like a little heat, and so I just threw a sprinkling of red pepper flakes on here. And there you have it, zucchini galette. Just absolutely delicious and the perfect summer dish. Give this recipe a try, tribe. Thanks for watching, tribe. If you like this kind of content, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave me a comment, and share. I have new content coming out every week.